Jordan Peterson is a right-winger. He just is. For whatever reason, he believes in conservative values, which doesn't always come out in his lectures. But ultimately, he believes in maintaining the status quo at all costs. And so conveniently, all of his solutions to things like inequality and climate change conclude that right-wing ideas are the solution, no matter how much mental gymnastics or gibberish he has to perform to get to that conclusion. In the end, he's just not complicated at all. And this is all reflected in his Anima and Animus, the masculine's feminine, the feminine's masculine, the extension of Jordan Peterson's shadow, to use his Jungian technique. And our next section, the Anima and Animus. He might make it seem more complex or academic, but ultimately, all of Jordan J. Jorpson P. Peterson's conclusions on society are no different than some conservative boomer romanticizing the good old days when minorities and women had the same rights as children and everything fit his neat little triangle. And I really think it's part of why he had to stop being a professor. I have no way of knowing for sure, but I'm guessing he's not a great person to work with. You know? What with all the magic spells he's casting. The only real unique difference is that he often likes to pose his bigotry as open questions, like he's exploring a topic as an educator. Here he is pondering if the reason women are so outraged is because they long for the touch of infants. You know how infants are famous for calming people down. Here he is just asking the question if feminists secretly long for male dominance, like he's f***ing Aristotle orating from a mound of enlightenment. How dare you, if you find these humble questions offensive, for you must clearly be trying to censor his wisdom based on the fact that unfair hierarchies are natural, based on puffy lobster fights, and therefore, feminists secretly want to be dominated and impregnated. Here he is reflecting on the Harvey Weinstein scandal. Quote, I'm not saying Harvey Weinstein's victims invited their own victimization, but I'm not impressed by the fact that this went on forever and no one said anything. And again, what? What is your point, Jordan? Are you blaming the victims or not? Jordan loves to do this. He loves to claim he's not making any specific conclusion while pondering absolutely wild questions seemingly designed to portray feminism or equality as some kind of unsolvable enigma. Here is an absolute gem you may have seen where he's pondering the question of women in the workplace.
Here's a question. Can men and women work together in the workplace?
Yes, I do it.
How do you know?
Because I work with a lot of women.
Right. Well, it's been happening for, 40 years? And things are deteriorating very rapidly at the moment in terms of the relationships between men and women. Is there sexual harassment in the workplace? Yes. Should it stop? That'd be good. Will it? Well, not at the moment it won't, because we don't know what the rules are.
Do you think men and women can work in the workplace together?
I don't know.
Can men and women work together? Who can say? Who knows? It's a mystery? Where even am I? It's never been done before. What are the rules? Why aren't there any rules? Why isn't there like a book of policies or a code of conduct that a job gives you about their rules? It's an unsolvable contraption. Speaking of rules.
In fact, I've been told that at the university.
Yeah.
Never have a meeting with a student with the door closed. It's like I ignore that because there's no damn way I'm doing that. But that's common practice.
So we don't know the rules, but also the rules I do know about, I hate and will not follow. It's this moment from his 15-minute video about getting banned from Twitter.
What rules, you sons of bitches?
The rules you can read, Jordan! The ones you know about and broke on purpose. Sorry to get distracted. The point is, we clearly can't have women in the workplace because, of course, it's the women who are the problem. Women and the color red.
Here's a rule. How about no makeup in the workplace?
Why would that be a rule?
Why should you wear makeup in the workplace? Isn't that sexually provocative?
No.
It's not?
No.
Well, what is it then? What's the purpose of makeup?
Some people would like to just put on makeup.
Why?
I don't know why.
Why do you make your lips red? Because they turn red during sexual arousal. That's why.
Interesting how he doesn't identify any sexually provocative displays a man might do in the workplace as a problem. Should all men have to shave? Are shoulder pads banned? Is the shaft okay to show off if I cover up the tip? Almost like he's actually some kind of weird creep trying to justify his behavior through a half-assed academic sounding exercise. But yeah, I guess we should ban the color red from the office because it makes us horny. Or get rid of makeup. You know, like the Nazis did. Great solution. But of course, he's not saying that. He's just asking some really weird and specific questions, framed in a way to force one specific conclusion. And if you noticed, he's once again doing that lobster thing where he takes something from way back in our history or evolution, in this case, the idea that makeup simulates sexual excitement, which has been one use of makeup in some contexts at certain points, and applying it to modern times as if we haven't evolved past that in our society. He's saying, we just don't know if men can keep their dicks to themselves if women have red lips. It's something you see with a lot of these pickup artists when they talk about peacocking to attract women. And so again, if you're ever finding yourself making decisions based on what an animal would do thousands or millions of years ago, you might want to rethink your approach. I mean, except for my Dilophosaurus diet. Dietophosaurus! Find the cookbook series wherever books are sold. Use promo code SPIT on your food for 20% off the first book, Dietophosaurus. Eat like you got dangly little flap dildos all up on your neck. It's sweeping the nation. And like, let's say we even take Peterson as a reasonable person. Ban makeup because red lips and cheeks can simulate sexual arousal. Do you want to ban only red makeup? What about blue lipstick, black lipstick, nail polish? Eyeliner was used by Egyptians to protect from evil spiritual dangers. Is eyeliner okay if the reason is demons and not horny? Oh no, what if it's both? Do you see how silly this is yet? And yeah, if for some reason you're still wondering what Peterson's views are on feminism and women, it's not great. In fact, Johnston absolutely loves to claim that the patriarchy doesn't exist, but also that there are patriarchal elements that are good, but also there's no patriarchy.
There's an asymmetry in all sorts of places, but that doesn't mean that Western culture is a male-dominated patriarchy. The fact that there are asymmetries has nothing to do with your basic argument. Western society is a male-dominated patriarchy. It's like, no, it's not. That's not true. And even if it has a patriarchal structure to some degree, the fundamental basis of that structure is not power, it's competence. The doctrines that I'm opposed to are predicated on, well, one assumption they're predicated on, it's probably the primary assumption, is that the best way to view history is as the domination of a tyrannical male patriarchy.
Well, here's some clear ones. Here's some clear ones, right? Like major corporations, the vast majority of CEOs are male.
Yeah.
We think of that as part of the patriarchy.
Yeah.
Government. Yeah. Never been a female president. Vast majority of senators, congressmen, etc., male.
Yeah, so I guess we could say, well, the patriarchy is all those elements of hierarchical structure that are still dominated by men.
Law enforcement, military. Male, mostly male.
Right. Well, what's the hierarchy? It's a tyrannical patriarchy. It's like, no, it's not.
You're grateful for the productions of a tyrannical patriarchy. How does that make sense? Tyranny isn't good, is it? I mean, that's the definition of tyranny. Something that isn't good, and yet it's produced all these things that you're grateful for.
Side note, interesting point that the definition of tyranny is something that isn't good. Good definition, or untyrannical definition, as Jordan might say. Anyway, here is an interview where he says he believes that women were never discriminated against, ever. His argument being that since men worked under bad conditions, discrimination against women couldn't exist. It's an extremely flawed argument that devolves into him talking about how his grandmother was a farmer's wife in Saskatchewan and how much wood she chopped, and then how in the 50s, Betty Friedan started to, quote, whine about the plight of women, even though men fought in wars. And like, I don't know, did the women want those wars? Were they in charge of starting those wars? Did they vote for the people who were in charge of starting those wars? Well, eventually, once they were allowed to vote. This is the guy who talks about how it's unfair and inappropriate to talk about the 1% or the smallest percentage of men who own most of the things and are in positions of power, etc., while also saying how aggressiveness on the extremes is a male trait, and also there's no patriarchy and men fight in wars started by who exactly? It's so fucking weird and completely misses the nuance of like all of history. The kind of thing a 15-year-old would post on 4chan. And this guy is supposed to be some kind of centrist, reasonable thought leader? Not to mention that by claiming there's no discrimination against women, isn't he ignoring the natural hierarchies he claims exist?
Whatever pitfalls hierarchies might produce, you cannot lay them at the feet of the West, patriarchy, or capitalism. It's like, that's a non-starter. You're wrong.
So which is it, Jordan? Is the patriarchy a symptom of the natural hierarchy that we can't do anything about, or does it not exist at all? If women aren't discriminated against, then why do you also recognize that the pay gap for women is at least in part due to gender?
It does seem that way, but multivariate analysis of the pay gap indicate that it doesn't exist.
But that's just not true, is it? I mean, that 9% pay gap, that's a gap between median hourly earnings between men and women.
But there's
that exists.
Yeah, but there's multiple reasons for that. One of them is gender, but it's not the only reason.
The pay gap doesn't exist. Actually, it does, and one of the reasons is gender, but not the only reason. It sure seems like you're constantly saying two completely contradictory things that both conveniently conclude that feminism is bad.
There's plenty of women that are watching my lectures and coming to my talks and buying my books. It's just that the majority of them happen to be men.
Such a mystery! One of the reasons might be that in his book 12 Rules for Life, he describes men as representing order and women as representing chaos. See, I won't get too much into it, but Peterson's also seemingly fixated on the concepts of order and chaos. It is heavily featured in Maps of Meaning. Here are some silly diagrams he put in there. He talks about it all the time. I'm actually impressed I haven't mentioned it until now. But he's all deep into how a balance between order and chaos can be beneficial to life and, like, the universe and stuff. Big order and chaos guy. It's also discussed in 12 Rules for Life, in which he describes men as order and women as chaos. So men are order, but also there's no patriarchy where, like, men are order. When asked about literally this, funnily enough by Barry Weiss, of all people, Jordan explains.
I think that it's nihilism and hopelessness that constitute the major existential threat, especially to young people at the moment. Then I was concentrating on the necessity of discipline and order. So, and the issue with regards to the metaphysical or symbolic representation of chaos as feminine, well, that's a very complex problem. And the first thing you have to understand is that there's no a priori supposition that order is preferable to chaos in any fundamental sense. They're both constituent elements of reality. You can't say one's bad and the other's good. You can say that they can become unbalanced, and that's definitely not good. Too much chaos is not good, obviously. Too much order is not good, equally obviously. Those are the two extremes that you have to negotiate between.
Too much women and too much men are bad. You have to negotiate. Like, this is such a funny answer to the simple question, why did you think men are order and women are chaos? And first of all, you know what's orderly? Having 2 X chromosomes and a regular monthly menstrual cycle. You know what's chaotic? Tossing in a Y chromosome and just your little goons all over the place. But more importantly, male and female, order and chaos, neither has to be either. He's so obsessed with his theory of everything being about the balance between order and chaos that whenever he sees 2 things, he can't help but think, well, surely one must be order and the other chaos. No, man, that's not how it works. Well, plants are order and animals are chaos. See dogs? Dogs are chaos, whereas cats are order, I bet. It's absurd. He's absurd. Hey, thanks for watching that clip. Here's the evergreen end plate to ask you to like and subscribe. It's any day of the year where you are.